you tell us about season 3?
We always look at these things as movies, and we had the first movie, and the sequel, which was season 2, is always like hopefully a little darker, a little deeper, and for season 3, the third movie in a trilogy tends to go, bigger, more characters are added, a lot more humor, and so those are sort of the big things that we're focusing on this year. Obviously, there'll be the overarching emotional arc, and there'll be a big bad, and the villains of the week. But I think the changes that we've made to the show, like changing the flashbacks and adding Brandon, make the show feel like a continuation of what's come before, but feels like hopefully something a little bit new.
How did you settle on the big bad for this season?
We wanted to do something that we hadn't done before. With Malcolm, it was a very specific villain, who had a very specific agenda. But that was designed where they didn't even really necessarily know they were up against each other until the very end. And in season 2, Slade's plan was all revenge. It was personal. It was something he blamed Oliver for. For season 3, we wanted something like a new challenge for Oliver. So, the season 3 big bad, really speaks to the emotional theme of the season, which is, can I be the Arrow and Oliver Queen at the same time? Because the villain sort of says to Oliver, the reason you're not able to fully be the Arrow and do all the things you should be doing is because you're still holding on to Oliver Queen. And I've left my identity behind to fully commit to my cause. And if you do that, you could rise as high as I'm rising. So it's a whole new challenge for Oliver. And that's how we landed, knowing that was emotionally what we wanted to do. That was how we landed on who we chose for the villain of season 3.
You talked about flashbacks and how you were doing them differently. I noticed where we left off, we're not on the island anymore.
No, we're in Hong Kong.
So how is that going to affect the storyline for the flashbacks since we're not in this familiar territory?
Well, if you think about the flashbacks, it's not necessarily flashing back to the island, but flashing back to the 5 years between Oliver leaving on the Queen's Gambit and when he returned in the pilot. There were hints all along the way that he hadn't been on the island the whole time. I mean, even simple things like if he spent 5 years on an island, how did he learn computers and all of these other things that he probably didn't have there? When we made the pilot, there were 2 ideas that Mark and Greg and I had very early on. One was that Sarah was still alive, and that she would be the canary when we first saw her, and that at the end of season 2, Oliver would wake up not on the island. So it's amazing to now be here in season 3 and have gotten to those changes. But as always, wherever he is, it'll be the continuing evolution of Oliver becoming the person that we saw in the pilot. I think for the first 2 years, he's still reasonably, even though he's gained these skills and gone through a lot, there's still a lot of the Oliver Queen that we saw in the flashbacks early on. And this season is really going to be a big step into darkness, and you're really going to see him start to change as the things he's up against in the flashbacks this season really challenge his morality and his humanity, and that you'll understand a lot more of what you saw in the pilot.
With the Suicide Squad returning, we saw a glimpse of Harley Quinn. Any chance that she might be making another small appearance?
I don't know about that. There's very few things we've asked DC Comics for that we haven't gotten. That was, that was something we asked for, and what you saw of her was the compromise that Jeff Johns and I came up with. To even get that much was sort of a thrill for us. I know that they've got other plans for her, or I should say that maybe they do, since they said we shouldn't do that. But that was it was certainly an Easter egg that thrilled us, and when we were watching on Twitter, seeing people get excited about that. But the Suicide Squad will definitely be back, whether we see the deranged female prisoner again, we'll have to see.
Well, speaking of characters that you do have a lot to play with, Brandon Routh playing Ray Palmer, that's a character that's never been done in live action, or live action that never got released. I think,
Yes, he was in the Justice League pilot for CBS.
But when this show is so much based in reality, and Ray Palmer is such a science fiction character, what's it been like building that character as a personality and kind of merging those two ideas?
Well, I think last season with the Mirakuru and obviously with the Flash, it's given us a little bit more license to have some less sort of grounded stuff on Arrow. That being said, he's actually coming in with a very grounded story, and there's like with a lot of the characters who come onto the show, them actually putting on a costume and doing whatever it is that they do in the comics might be a long time coming. Right now we're much more focused on Ray Palmer, who he is, and is he good, is he bad, and the story that the backstory that will actually tie into things that we've already seen. You just didn't realize it. It does feel very real and very grounded, and the best thing that Brandon is bringing on is humor. He has this old-time movie star quality about him, this Jimmy Stewart, Cary Grant, and it's like it reminds us of an old 1930s, 40s movie where if Steven is Clark Gable, Brandon is Jimmy Stewart, and with Felicity in the middle of them, and he's just bringing a whole different energy to the show, which is really amazing.
Writing for the show or even the season, are there any hard and fast rules that you have that you didn't want to do, or things that you wanted to try to avoid?
I don't think there's anything like that. I think that what's worked really well for us is early on doing the work of what does the villain want, what does the hero want, what does the hero need to learn this season emotionally, because when you're in the weeds and you're trying to break an episode that you can't figure out, if you have that strong, the coat rack, it's like if you have the hook, that you can, something you can always latch back onto, and especially on Arrow, last season when we were, if we ever got in trouble with an episode, we always thought about, well, this is a season, am I a hero or am I a villain? And, sometimes that was, we realized, oh, well, we can have Sarah be going through the same thing as Oliver was. And, and for this year, the theme of identity and, every character this season is asking, who am I? Am I this or am I that? Am I Thea Queen? Am I Thea Merlin? So knowing that, sort of helps us along. But, we don't generally have any, specific rules. I think there's things we definitely learned from. I think, season 2 was for our, just by our standards, we felt like we solved a lot of the problems that we'd experienced on season 1, and there were problems on season 2, new problems that we feel like the work that we're doing now is going to solve that, and hopefully each year we'll continue to get better.
Can you talk about new characters, Brandon, and whoever else? Because we hear there's a big bad.
The big bad will be announced shortly. We also have Devin Aoki, who's playing Katana, who's a fun comic book character who originally appeared with Batman and the Outsiders. So it's we're very proud of our ass-kicking female characters, and to add another one and add some swordplay this year. We're excited about, and her husband Maseo is played by Carl Jung, who's becomes Oliver's companion and friend in the flashback story. So those are sort of the big new characters for early on, and we have John Barrowman back. So yes, we're super excited for season 3.